Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashley Paget. Welcome to Avaya's Overcoming Depression and Loneliness curriculum. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher Mark Waldman is here today to talk about how to mindfully shift between brain networks to conquer loneliness and social anxiety. Mark has authored 14 books, including the bestseller How God Changes Your Brain, an Oprah pick in 2012. He created the Neuro Leadership course for business students at Loyola Marymount University.
Everybody tongue ties Loyola Marymount University. Try to say it 4 times fast. And
Hey, I practice.
I just teach somewhere off in Southern California.
Yes. So students at Loyola Marymount University, and is a world-leading neuroscience expert on spirituality, communication, consciousness, and the brain. His work has been featured in Time Magazine, The Washington Post, New York Times, Forbes, and Oprah Magazine, and he has been on hundreds of radio and television programs, including PBS and NPR. His NeuroCoach training program has certified students in 16 countries to help others solve their personal and professional problems. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. And as you found out before we started this, I often like to tease and joke around, particularly when dealing with heavy notions like default mode network, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and but I'm going to help break some of that down for you and everybody watching this, and I think we'll have a whole lot of fun.
Oh, I think so too. Humor makes everything better. All right, so let's get started. So tell me, what's going on in the brain when a person feels lonely?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because we found out in our research that very few people have even tried to identify what loneliness is. And so what I like to do when discussing what I call practical neuroscience is to guide everyone who's watching this video into a kind of a brief experience of it, because the words are only about as opposed to being aware of. And what is it like to be aware of loneliness? So I'm going to use you as my guinea pig, and the rest of the audience can go along with this too. So my first question to you,
Okay.
if I was to ask you, what is loneliness?
Oh.
First, see?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So loneliness to me is, even if you're with people, feeling like you are not accepted or understood.
Okay, I like that. Let's play a little game now, and we'll play it with our audience too. I want everybody to kind of close their eyes and deeply relax. And the fastest way to turn off all the busyness in your head, which by the way is what causes most of the sense of loneliness, if you do a few mindful yawns and super slow stretches, the yawning actually slows down activity in this default mode network. So that's very important when it comes to loneliness. I call it the imagination network. Mm-hmm. And the super slow movement helps to bring you into the present moment. And when you do that a few times, you should feel more present. Are you present?
Yes.
And you should know it, because anything that you were thinking about saying is suddenly gone.
Very true.
So everyone, close your eyes, go even into a deeper state of relaxation, and now ask your intuition, what does it say loneliness is? And this will be different for everybody. So, and sit there and wait to see what comes to you. And I'll do the same thing as well. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Loss.
Now, the first thing that came to my mind is I'm not going to be able to interact with anybody, and I'm going to be left all alone. Now, what's the next thing that comes into your mind? So go look for another level and form of loneliness.
Misunderstanding or not being understood.
And what came to me was an image of me sitting in a corner of the room going like this. Oh, nobody likes me. I'm all alone. I'm going to die destitute and alone, whatever else. I'm willing to bet that everyone who's watching this and you, we could play this loneliness game about 10 or 20 or 30 times. And in that doing that, it's like, oh, well, okay, loneliness could be this. It could be that. It might be this. It might be something totally different. But they all share something in common. You are basically using your imagination and old memories of what loneliness was to you in the past. You're using old definitions of loneliness. But if you actually sit down and think about the feeling of loneliness, you'll find that it's kind of hard to grab onto because there's all kinds of thoughts and feelings moving around. And that's going on in this imagination network that, if you go to PubMed, the neuroscientists will call it default mode network. But it's the part of your brain that's always attempting to predict a positive or a negative future. So it's both going on at the same time. So when you are feeling lonely, you're thinking, oh, I'm missing something in my life. I should have somebody there. You know, I might get stuck in the state of loneliness. And so most of loneliness is imaginary. I'll give you another example. You and everyone else close your eyes, yawn, stretch, relax again. See if you can immerse yourself in an experience of loneliness, maybe pulling up a memory from the past.
Okay.
Does any memory come to you?
Yeah. So I don't know how old I turned, but it was the one birthday party that I had decided to try and invite friends from school, and no one showed up.
Were you feeling lonely or were you feeling rejected?
Ooh, I think it was both. You know, because I wanted so badly to play with my friends and, you know, to have people with me on a day that I felt was special, but it was just, you know.
So you were lonely, but were you alone in that moment?
Physically, no, because my parents were there, my brother was there.
Right. So if you take a moment and you say, okay, I'm not alone. All these people are over here. But all of these people I was hoping was going to be here. You see, again, hoping that something in the future might come true. You might ignore the fact that you're not actually lonely and you're not actually alone. People oftentimes confuse loneliness with the sense of being alone and also with the sense of what would be called social anxiety.
Ah, that's interesting.
So in this situation, yes, you expected a bunch of people to show up. It would be a realistic expectation. In other words, one of the things you have to do with aloneness and loneliness and social anxiety, you always have to ask yourself a question. Is this going on in your imagination? Or is this actually something that's happening in the environment? If I was to take you and I was to lock you up in a jail cell where you couldn't talk to anybody, you couldn't see anybody, some food would be slid under the door, you would be profoundly alone. And the research shows that that's the worst thing that can happen to your brain. You literally will go neurologically insane. So throughout history, people who have been put into isolation if they can find a piece of metal object, they're going to scrape it clean so that they can have a reflection of themselves. So even a sense of yourself eliminates that form of solitariness.
Wow.
In other words, what we're saying is that our brain is designed to be a social creature and a social animal. You can even take a single neuron from a sea slug, for example. This is Eric Kandel's Nobel Prize winning environment. And if you deprive it from interacting and exploring the environment, basically it's looking for other neural connections or whatever else. If it doesn't find those neural connections, if it doesn't find a, shall we say, a relationship, with another synapse, another, dendrite, it will kind of shrivel up and eventually die. So from the time we're born, and this goes into Panksepp's amazing research about what our core emotions are. We are first emotional beings.
Yes.
When you look at our core emotions, which is different from what most people think are emotions, they are basically caring, fear, rage, grief, and two of the most interesting ones that are so much overlooked in our educational system, curiosity and playfulness.
Yes.
So if you look at your core emotions, every single one of those is primarily about other people. Now, certainly if you're falling off a mountain cliff and tumbling it down, you genuinely have a fear, which is a survival-oriented fear. But if I was to ask you one thing that you might be fearful of in the next year, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Oh my goodness.
And everyone else listening to this, do this as well, because when you see Ashley's face looking up like that, she's engaged in curiosity. She's doing something more than just being trapped in her imagination and memory centers. She's actually stimulating the motivational center to look for something that she hasn't thought about before. That stimulates curiosity. That stimulates dopamine. And the combination of those two stimulates the social center, which is almost the central core of your brain.
Yes.
So what would make you fearful in the next year?
Fearful, honestly, of losing some friends. I have some friends that are in the local theater group, and because of COVID, their jobs have dried up. So they're having to find employment and find ways of making a living outside of the city that we've been in together for the past few years.
So you see how much of that is relational.
Yes.
So loneliness is that fear that you will be left there.
Yes.
Now, research also shows that, we're not always in relationship with other people.
Yes.
So we also have to learn how to master the state of being alone. And aloneness would basically be you are having a relationship with yourself that you trust. So if somebody has undermined your self-confidence or has abused you in certain ways, and you're afraid of even interacting with somebody like that, you're going to get. One of the choices might be to distance yourself from other people. But even then, when you distance yourself, people never actually choose isolation. They don't choose to be alone. They oftentimes choose to immerse themselves in spiritual practice.
Yes.
They're having a relationship with God, the universe, beingness, aliveness, whatever a person's term is for being spiritually aware. So are we ever really alone? Well, unless you're put in solitary confinement or you find yourself, somehow dropped off in the middle of the wilderness, you are certainly alone in relationship to other people. And you have to wrestle and struggle with this. So every infant does it from the moment they pop out of the womb. They're wrestling back and forth between the right amount of interaction, and both mammals, young mammals and infants and children, they play with each other to learn the social rules. If you're deprived of that type of human contact, if you're forced into that kind of solitude or isolation from other people, it damages a number of the neural circuits inside of your brain. So we are born literally in a state of anxiety, but we don't feel it. We don't feel it as anxious, okay? And again, anxiety is part of the imagination center. Anxiety is that sense that, gee, maybe something negative is going to happen in the future. And that's kind of going on in this, this right side of this huge prefrontal area that people call the default mode network. I prefer imagination network because the other side is imagining all of the positive things that could happen to you. So anxiety is kind of getting stuck in between, where you waffle back and forth between these two. Now, if you decide that the future is going to be negative, that you're going to be alone and lonely no matter what, your imagination center shuts down. Your social brain shuts down. You stop thinking a whole bunch. And there's a word for that. Want to guess? Want to guess?
Oh, I don't know if I can guess.
That's
What
your
is it?
neurological definition of depression.
Okay. Got you.
So the newest language in neuroscience is called brain network theory, and they're looking at how these different huge areas are functionally interacting with each other. And all the words that I can use is not as effective as if I can simply briefly show you a picture
Yes, please.
of what that looks like. So I put together a little slide for everyone to look at. And I presume you can all see this, yes?
Yes.
So what you are seeing in the top right of your screen, each different color is a set of neurons, and those strands that you're seeing are the axons that extend from neurons in the outermost part of our neocortex, and they're weaving all the way through the middle part of the brain, your white matter, shall we say, to other parts of your brain. So in this particular picture here, your social brain is probably that green area that you're seeing.
Okay.
But notice that it goes to every other part of your brain.
Yeah.
Okay. Same like with the blue area, which is part of your motor cortex and your visual thing. All of that information is going to different functions in the brain. So this is the network of the social brain. That social brain has a particular name. It's called the salience network. This is the part of your brain that puts value on the emotional experience that's actually happening to you while you are living in the present moment. Now, in the lower picture here, this is what you're doing when you're thinking.
Okay.
So if I want you to pay attention to each word, all of these other areas in the brain become very, very quiet. And so what you're seeing in the bottom part is that you're performing a task. This is you carrying out a plan. This is your particular goal. In this case, the goal is, can you understand each word that I'm saying? It only holds a little bit of information, which means that when I'm talking, the listener's brain is only going to remember about 10 words from the 300 that I say. So what's important for the human brain is not that you exactly remember what I said. Your brain could care less about what I say. Your brain is looking, that's that curiosity and motivation part. It's looking for what will be exciting to it. It's looking for the thing that's going to stimulate that large green area in the center of your brain.
Got you.
So that's the thing of value. Now, an easy way to have a sense of what that salience network is like is if I ask everyone to close their eyes, again, yawn and stretch and just come back into the present moment. see what your intuition supplies when I ask you this question. What is your deepest, innermost value? A deep inner meaning and purpose. And what's the first word that comes to your mind?
Love.
Which is a relational word.
Yeah.
For me, it's serenity, which is more like having a particular type of inner calmness and basically comfort with myself. Mm-hmm. So in a state of serenity, I can be alone and I can be connected to myself, the world, other individuals, but I remain calm. In other words, in that state, with that green area lit up, that salience network stops this part of the brain from becoming overly active, your imagination.
Yes.
And it stops you from thinking too hard and ruminating too much and working too hard and being that type A personality. So over here in this drawing here, I've drawn what that imagination default mode network looks like. It's huge.
Yes.
And every time, you can only focus your attention on a task actually for maybe about 20 or 30 seconds. And then this area in the bottom here turns off. No more pulling up memories, not using very much of your imagination or creativity. That'll happen if you hit a problem. Okay, I'm lonely. There's a problem. I tried A, B, and C, and D. I'm still lonely. I'm still alone. How do I find that relationship that I want? You'll go through all your memories, but you'll also stop and you'll relax. And this big yellow area will become very activated. This is your creative imagination. This is your creative problem-solving part. And it'll offer all kinds of solutions endlessly. There's no end to how much imagination we have. You're born with that. You're not born with the ability to select from it, to plan, and to put it into action. So the part on the bottom is, doesn't even become fully developed until you are in your 20s.
Wow, really?
Yeah, you're being motivated really from all those instinctual emotions, which are all the way down here in the bottom part of your brain, influencing your motivational center, that turns on your imagination center to think about all the different ways that you can get whatever you fantasize or believe or need to get. And then you think about how to carry that out. So the salience network, just by sitting back and focusing on a deep inner value, or just becoming aware of how you are thinking about loneliness, stimulates the part of your brain that creates the ideal balance between all of these other brain networks here that you are seeing in the different colored areas. But let me give you an experiential sense of that.
Okay.
Go ahead and close your eyes. We played around with you thinking about loneliness, bringing up memories of lonely events. Now, what happens if you just sit there and you become curious and just allow all the different thoughts and feelings of loneliness to flow through your head? Ashley, let's see if you can capture them, because this changes literally every second. If you watch the sense of loneliness,
okay,
what thoughts or feelings pop into your head?
The memory of sitting in front of my computer at the middle of the night when I was...
Now, don't go into it. Just be aware that a memory has come up.
Okay, yes.
If you are about to immerse yourself in the memory, and then you'll bring up all of the emotional feelings encoded into that memory. You just watch that one thing, and it'll float away if you don't do anything. This is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the only strategy we know of to deliberately and activate that green center in that picture, that salience network, the thing that puts value on everything. So what you are doing is just watching different pieces of your imagination, and you can even watch how you're thinking about it, but you're sitting here in this relaxed state of mindful awareness. So if everyone tries to put themselves into it, with practice, you can become very astute. So if I watch loneliness inside of my head, this is how the imagination network works. but my awareness is helping me to see that. First thought is loneliness, a fantasy, feels like something off in the distance. Now I'm just noticing my breathing. Ooh, I feel a tingle up, inside of myself. Loneliness. Oh, this big memory from the past came up that really blew my mind a few weeks ago. No, I'm never really lonely. I figured out a way to always be engaged with somebody, even if it's through Zoom. Ooh, a pleasurable sense just flows through me. Does that give you a sense, Ashley, of what we're talking about in terms of being aware of how your imagination and memory are constantly chattering on in this huge area?
Yes, absolutely.
But when you are aware, you have less activity going on in your imagination. So you can't get lost in your fantasies. You can't get lost in the idea of loneliness. Mm-hmm. Loneliness is not an emotion. It's not a feeling. It's an idea. It doesn't exist anywhere except in that creative imagination of yours.
Wow.
So neuroscientific definition of loneliness would be a combination of imagination plus your memory plus anxiety.
Oh.
Now remember, if you're in a state of relaxed, mindful awareness, the anxiety goes away.
Yes.
Anxiety is also part of your imagination. And then that's the most beautiful thing about this simple brain network theory. We can actually begin to change the overactivity or underactivity of key networks of our brain. And what happens when we're doing that, it becomes easier for us to focus on the next task. That might only be 5 minutes long as we plod along to whatever goal we have. So in that case, this is how you exercise those brain networks. I'm feeling alone. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling socially isolated. I have a whole bunch of social anxiety. I'm always afraid I'm going to get rejected or something awful is going to happen when I'm going in there. If before you go into that social situation, you just sit there and watch and remember that this is your imagination, and you train yourself to be aware of all of those fears and fantasies and anxieties that are constantly changing, and wishes and desires and, fantasies about the most ideal social relationship in the world. As you sit there and you're aware of it, within that awareness, you'll begin to realize that most of the things that you want are fantasies. Mm-hmm. Now, on a survival basis, we all need constant social interaction, or again, like I said, all of those brain networks go so wildly, inconsistent, firing wrong in all the wrong ways. And you end up in the lower picture where all you could do is think about the fact that you have failed. That's depression.
Yes.
So it's assuming that your fears and negative beliefs are true. There's no such thing as truth in your brain. Truth is, again, a creative idea. It's what we simply assume is real. But neuroscience shows us that almost everything we even see and think about is our interpretation of reality, but not reality itself. So that was my little,
wow,
to kind of help give you a visual sense of what you can do with loneliness, with social enjoyment, with anxiety. It's the most difficult to do with depression, because in depression, you've turned off your ability to even become aware that half of your depression is real, because you've turned everything off, or you actually have a neurochemical imbalance. And that the other part of depression is just assuming that your imagination, that everything's going to turn out bad, you've turned that into truth.
Oh, wow. It really, there was something, oh my gosh, there was something that an interesting thought that I had when I was younger. Is, the saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I had twisted it to reality is in the mind of the beholder.
And loneliness is in the mind of the beholder.
Yes.
Anxiety is in the mind of the beholder. The fear of being rejected is in the mind of the beholder.
Yes.
But it's a different kind of mind. There's, this is your ability to be consciously aware of a small bit of information is different from all of that mental, imaginative activity that's going on 30 times faster than you'll ever be able to put into words.
Wow. That helps to cut through all the noise.
Yes. You don't try to turn it off. The biggest mistake, people always want, I have a limiting belief. I want to get rid of that limiting belief. You can't get rid of a limiting belief because a belief is something that you assume was true that gets built into a memory network. You don't eliminate those axons. You can stop them from being active, and eliminate a different set of memories that says everything is perfectly fine. Or you can pull yourself in the present moment, which is free of memory. It's free of beliefs.
Yes.
You can't stay there all the time, but you can throughout the day shift back and forth. So we tell our students, with executive MBA students, managers, teachers, clients, therapists, patients, that you can, within just a couple of minutes, sit back and take anything that you're thinking about or worried about or desiring and go back and forth between these three networks. I'm thinking about this problem I may have, this feeling that's bothering me. The imagination is going on in the background about all the things that may or may not be true about it, that may or may not be ways to bring it into reality. But the only thing we can actually do and consciously stimulate in our brain, we can certainly choose how we think, what we choose to focus on. I'll focus on this negative fantasy versus that positive fantasy. But we can go into that state of being aware of the thinking, the feelings, the memories, the emotions. Let me give you one more example of what you can do with this exercising your brain networks through awareness. Everyone, again, close your eyes for a moment. Try doing 2 or 3 mindful yawns. With each yawn and stretch, see if you can actually sense the difference in terms of how your thinking and awareness has shifted. You're in that state of relaxed, mindful awareness when you feel calm, kind of present, almost hard to come up with words and thoughts. You're just here with us. Now, in this state, everyone, and Ashley, you as well, all I want you to do is to ask your intuition. Again, that's part of your salience network. That's part of your social brain network. It's part of the value network in your brain. What did you find to be the most interesting and useful from anything I've said in the past half hour? And listen, don't look for something. Let something come to you. And you'll know what that intuitive insight is because it kind of gives you that tingly sense. That's the value center being stimulated. That's what releases dopamine that keeps you motivated and alive and curious about the world. What is the first thing that you found to be most interesting, or what your brain found to be the most interesting? Ashley?
That is so tied and entangled with your imagination.
Now, sit with that. Go back into the awareness. Intuition can be wrong sometimes. Sit with that sense and see how it feels. Does it feel right? Does that feel useful? If so, you have to write that down right now, because when you're in a state of relaxed, mindful awareness, you don't form memories.
Oh.
So if this is the place where you get a new insight, you have to now turn it into a memory that will be automatically useful for you tomorrow or the next day or the next day. But you can do this like 3 or 4 times, like Ashley. Again, go back in, let go of everything you thought about, and see what your intuition provides as another useful insight from our conversation. And everyone else, do it at home. Sit there for a full 20 seconds and see if something begins to stick that gives you that sense of, this really feels valuable. And if you're watching Ashley and you see that half smile on their face and that nod, that's a genuinely new insight. You can see it in a person's facial expression. They light up. It's an aha experience.
Yeah. So it's, that we're not actually alone.
Is that important enough to write down?
Yes, absolutely.
For me, if I ask myself, what did I find to be the most important that I want to impart to everyone, is the importance of those two key emotions that take place in the lower part of your brain that happen long before you're conscious of anything. Curiosity, exploring whatever it is, your thoughts, other people, the situation, non-judgmentally, just to see what you can discover, combined with playfulness. We all take everything we do too seriously. I remember when I was sitting next to, we were in a meditation retreat, and sitting next to me was Jengo Toko Rinpoche, a very famous Buddhist meditation teacher. And we spent the whole day, in silent meditation. And he was sitting next to me, and Sharon Salzberg said, "Hey, share your experience of the day with the person sitting next to you." And what he said to me was, he said, "I talked all day." And then he said, "You Americans, you try too hard to meditate." So don't take brain network theory and seriously. That's where you're turning it into something that is supposed to be important. By eliminating that playfulness and curiosity, you've killed off the ability for your brain to learn new strategies, become more socially intimate in the present moment. That's what brings an end to loneliness.
That's amazing. I love everything that we just did. We are running low on time. So I would like to remind everyone that there's a button below this video. When you click on it, it leads you to a special offer that Mark has for you. Can you tell everyone what that is?
Yes, I have just created and completed a huge mini course called The Neuroscience of Love, Relationships, and Intimacy. And in this, I'll walk you through, those are two, that's just one of the slides of about 100 that will be in there. I'll walk you through the neuroscience step by step of what is love, what is the fantasy of love, what is the experience of love, what is that sense of connectedness. We'll go through the neuroscience, but at each step along the way, I'm not just going to talk about it. You're not going to sit there and be passive. I'm going to ring that bell as we did today and guide you into an experiential sense of that. Within that experiential sense, what you find intuitively valuable is what you should hang on to. And this is called brain-based experiential learning, something we developed, in our executive MBA program at LMU. And it's totally different. I mean, think about it. It would mean I would have to teach something to you, pause after 5 minutes, allow you to spend a minute, what was valuable to you, and because you do have to learn certain things that your brain is not interested in, like calculus or, something, but you want to build. But as one 10-year-old told me, he wanted to build a bridge to the moon. He was doing terrible in school.
Oh.
And because he was bored with it. And so he said, well, how are you going to build that bridge to the moon? Well, he eventually got to the point that he realized he's going to have to learn calculus to do it. And we enrolled that 10-year-old in a college course. Yeah.
Good.
So brain-based experiential learning is different. And that's one of the other things I will bring into this program on the neuroscience of love, relationships, intimacy, loneliness, divorce, marriage, the whole range of everything, which is all centered in that most important part of our brain called the salience network, which doesn't become fully activated until you are in your 30s. But I'm going to show you how to do it more quickly and how to teach it to others.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm definitely going to be tuning in for this myself. So, are there any final insights you'd like to share with us? Anything that you would like to cover that we did not go over?
One, social relationships will imbue your life with meaning and purpose. Social relationships stimulates the anterior cingulate and insula, the same structures that came up in all of our brain scan studies with different forms of meditation and mindfulness practice. The stimulation of those two structures and that salience network creates a balance throughout your entire brain that allows you to function better, basically across the board. You want to discover, you just keep asking yourself, coming back, what are you finding meaningful, valuable? Anchor yourself to your own internal values. What's my deepest relationship value? What's my deepest communication value? What's my deepest work value? Those can anchor you for an entire hour while you're at work. Those can help you stay out of the conflicts when you need to talk to somebody else who is a difficult person. So those social relationships, that playfulness and curiosity that you bring into every dialogue and interaction you have with somebody, that's what gives your life neurological meaning and purpose. And the other thing is, we all need to master, probably throughout our lives, that delicate balance between aloneness, being with yourself, being in that solitude of serenity, and social interaction. How do I bring that solitude, that serenity, that playfulness, that curiosity into every sentence that you speak when you're engaging with somebody else? Go out and practice it. Teach somebody today some form of, yawning, stretching, relaxing, asking them what their deepest, innermost value is, and then have a conversation with them about loneliness or aloneness or fear or imagination or anything. But let your intuition guide that conversation, with each of you speaking no more than 10 words at a time.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mark, and for sharing your wisdom. We at Avaya truly appreciate you here.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this latest class. We'll see you again soon.
Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.